In this episode of Over the Bonnet, I sit down with a man who suffered horrific injuries after an improvised explosive device he uncovered detonated while working for the Australian Army in Afghanistan. Michael Lydiard has pushed through enormous physical and emotional challenges in his battle to recover and rebuild his life, and part of that process includes retraining to become an occupational therapist.
Over the Bonnet with Mark Piepers.
Well, at least the guests are good. You'll never know what happens with the conversation when it's over the bonnet.
You're kidding me, aren't you?
Michael Lydiard, welcome to Over the Bonnet.
Thanks, mate. Much appreciated.
Tell me about a typical day at work for you when you're working as an occupational therapist. What do you get up to?
Well, generally, there's obviously a lot of administration, linking in and tying in with insurers, making contact and building rapport with insurers and the clients. When we're not doing that, it's about trying to build on the function in everyday life, even if that's through assessments or trying to build on, what adaptations they require or modifications through providing assistive technology or just building on basic interventions to help them feel like they're achieving their life goals.
Is that important?
100%. Everyone, I think people can forget at times, depending on their physical and psychological health, that they can forget the meaning of goals. Everyone has their own diversity and their levels of, difficulty. So, trying to ensure and identify short-term and the long-term goal helps them to drive towards their own change.
What sort of people are you dealing with when you're working with them?
Look, it's a wide category, and when I say category, I'm talking about cultures, personalities, and it's multiple, because you're not just looking at one person, you're looking at the whole person. And to look at the whole person, you look at the individual, the client you're working with, but generally they have a son, a daughter, they've got a wife, and they've sometimes got parents and so forth. So you've got to work around their dynamics as well. But generally, I'm working with people from defence, veterans, people that are at work with Telstra or the NAB, or have had injuries, and work cover want us to help and get them back into the workplace or identify more suitable roles for them.
When you're dealing with someone, what are you looking for, though, when you're trying to ascertain how to help them?
It's hard. I guess it's really about building rapport and helping them to understand that you have their best interests at heart. Having empathy and understanding their story, because obviously there's a lot of medical history. Not along with the history that's there, they're obviously most of the time getting a lot of medical help. So it's about, really understanding what they are going through, what their challenges are and the balance of. So it's about listening, but also obviously being observant as well, because, when you start looking at pain behaviours, sometimes they will tell us, we have this certain pain and there's certain clues that will let us, yes, you are right, or it might be slightly different. So as I sit there and talk, I'm being observant and observing, the body language, listening to the tone of speech, taking in what's happening around in the environment. So he might say that he doesn't like sitting outside or sitting in public, but we could be out in the public and there's people walking in and out and he's not affected. So you're observing what he is saying and listening to it, but taking what's happening around, because generally people with PTSD will sit with the back towards a wall, they'll be facing out. People that are depressive will be looking down, not maintaining eye contact and so forth. And then there's that body language or, behaviours there, the sighing deeply, the agitated and so forth. So there's a lot to take in and trying to build on that conversation and reassure them that you are empathetic, you do understand where they're coming from, but also reassure them what they're doing is correct, right, and where and how we can help build forward or move forward.
As an occupational therapist, what's bigger, the injury or the recovery?
I don't think there is anything that's better. I think because everyone is unique and everyone is an individual, the injury will impact the person, at different levels and different impacts of their life. If we were to say, lumbar spondylosis, which is deterioration, of the lumbar, it affects people different ways. In the military, it is brought on earlier because of heavy weighted loads. where they can't carry packs or can't, do repetitive movements and so forth. So when we look at that and understand the condition, well, we need to build and reassure them that the pain that they feel is present, is there. We can't tell them that what you're feeling is not pain. But what we can try to ensure them is that, what you are feeling, and try to get them to help them to understand that pain is part of life. And it's hard to concept, in my experience, I've still got pain, but for me to live a quality of life, I manage my pain through different strategies, and I've got to be open and be willing to talk to people, and adapt my lifestyle around the pain to fit my accomplishments. So it's about building hope and then building, on the goals through good choices, but also supportive choices where they can see the value of change.
Someone that has always been blind as opposed to someone that's blinded, they have a different take on it. Now, the deterioration that you talk about as opposed to a traumatic injury, do you notice much difference between the two?
I do. And not talking about my personal experiences where I lost, limbs and sight from a traumatic event. I can recall I have a military friend that became blind from his service, and I had been working with a client that was born blind or got degeneration of his optical nerve and so forth. And the intake is totally different. So the gentleman that was a veteran that's lost life, and he had sight, he knew what was going on. He got out about and had to learn how to adapt. The gentleman that had deterioration of the retina and so forth, he had time to learn, and he's adapted and so forth. But his perception to life is way different to the gentleman that was a veteran that was dramatically given to him, where he had to learn directly and quickly and so forth. So there is a difference, and that's what I mean. Everyone's got that unique story. The gentleman with the veteran, he had to accept, and this is what I think a lot of context can be lost. He couldn't drive anymore. He couldn't make a cup of tea and so forth. Where the gentleman that, had the retina deterioration, he was gradually supported, and there was someone always there willing to help him and give him that, which can be a barrier and not let them be an individual. Where the veteran just had to learn directly, quickly, and didn't understand the terms of support, how to ask for support. Is it too much to ask for this support here, now and then, where the other gentleman just learned to accept it?
How important is that support from family, friends, and people around you when you're dealing with these things?
I think it can be underestimated at times, the value of family and friends. In the fact that carer strain is a huge effect because the family or friends want to give help, but at the same time, the individual wants to be independent. They want to be seen normal. They want to be acting normal. So to constantly be given support and constantly to, say, we're here to help you, it needs to be allowed to let them either fail or try to understand the feeling of success. So to have the support of family is very important, not just physically, but psychologically and emotionally, for the fact that they know there's someone there. In my circumstances, I'm grateful. I've got my 12-year-old son that sits with me or, lives with me. I call upon him, at times where I am physically, psychologically and emotionally drained, strained from working with my own difficulties, where I will ask him, mate, can you do up my top button, mate, can you help me roll up a sleeve? So there's times where we seek help because we're fatigued. And that's anyone with an injury, someone with a back or leg injury, they want to be getting back out and normally, but because it's so draining and it's draining on them emotionally, they will seek help. So having that support is always critical. When you don't have the support, that is when we see relapse, or when we see that, people start thinking of suicide ideation, because it could just be a matter of support being talking to someone. It could be visually just being able to touch, and people forget the importance of touch. Being able to have someone close to you, just to put your hand on your shoulder, hand on your thigh to say you're doing well, everything's okay, can be so empowering at the same time. you forget the importance of it.
Is there carer fatigue though?
100%. Vicarious trauma, that's when, if I was talking to a veteran, he talks about his symptoms of overseas service, it might bring something onto me because it might remind me of my service, and it'll bring up my PTSD, it'll bring up my depression. So not only do you need to be wary of who you talk to and so forth, but depending on the level of care, the level of support you need, and that's why we have respite, to allow the carer, the supports to have time to reflect and have their own self-love, to have their own time to care for themselves. So carers, families, children need to be still, be reminded they are there for a loving relationship, and they need that time to build upon it. And we sometimes during injuries and, we need to make sure that we build on those relationships, because a lot of time is focused on the injured person and building on the medical management and building on them getting to the workplace, or building them just to have an everyday life where the family can be lost and they're not building on a loving and, and passionate relationship. So like when you asked before, who's involved, it's the whole dynamic involves more than one person. And for someone to have self-worth and to someone to have, self-identity, it is about identifying the whole dynamics and who's important to them and how to build on that.
How can family and friends best help then someone that is going through what you're describing?
Being an occupational therapist to me isn't hard. Maybe it's because of the lessons that I've learned and what I've been through. It is about, hearing them. And there's not just listening, but really understanding what they're going through. And it's difficult because sometimes or the injured person or the child doesn't know how to express it. So it is important in the fact that, that not only do you hear and you try to give them the level of support, but you also have to try to give them that level of independence. Like I said, to succeed and at the same time to fail. And there's nothing wrong with failing, because
it's a tough balancing act.
100%. And that's what I mean. I've learnt more through failing than succeeding. Through failure, you build self-confidence and then you get back up again. And then, that's where you get your resilience from learning and building back up. You might get knocked down, but then you get back up. So through failure, you do get success and you learn your own strengths and you learn your weaknesses. So, sometimes it is very hard, and it's hard, especially if you're a mother and father. If you have a son or daughter that has a diagnosis or has a condition that you want to be helping with, you want to be doing their shoelaces up, you want to be, helping them get dressed. But what's more important, giving them the fundamentals of how to be independent, to live life fully and to enjoy, to appreciate being able to do it yourself.
How hard is it though to get back up though when you do fail?
Once again, it's in the up to the individual. There's so many circumstances that can keep someone down. Your physical health is impacted by your mental health and vice versa. Your mental health is impacted by your physical. So as soon as you're knocked down, and you're given a diagnosis, which I refer to a label, because a lot of the times you're given a diagnosis and people understand what that condition is, and people have perceptions. People perceive that, I have PTSD, I have depression. I class it as a label because when you have that, you seem to stick to it and you seem to try to, I understand what PTSD is. I have depression. But as soon as you say, you've got depression, PTSD, it can be used against you. But because I understand what it is and I try to deal with my own life through PTSD and depression and anxiety, I try to make sure I pick on the positives of it. So to me, there's always positives in PTSD. In the depression, it's hard to find, positives, but the positives, I need to get out and find someone. I need to find something to do. So failure is me not doing something, but the positive is trying to get out to do it. So it's about self-rewarding, self-reassuring yourself, again, that it's hard, but it is achievable.
How do you reward yourself, though, when you're being positive and you're doing these personal goals?
It's about recognizing what you've achieved and how far you've come. I've got a lot of clients, and it's easy to sit there and listen to society. You know, people have depression, people have, you know, these diagnoses and things like that. But, you know, when you look at someone with depression, PTSD or anxiety, you know, it's hard to get out into shopping centres. It's hard to get out and just to do everyday things, especially if you've got chronic depression and things like that, or you don't know how to talk to people and how to open up to them. So the success is I've been able to get out to the shops today. You know, I've been able to, you know, take 2 steps to the mailbox, or, you know, it's a small step, but it's a good step. You know, the feelings and thoughts that come associated with it are impacting on us in, you know, personally, but you got to recognize and accept that you made an achievement, and you need to keep building on that achievement.
Is it harder, though, to push those boundaries when you've got a problem as opposed to someone that most people aren't used to pushing their boundaries?
Yeah.
And when they have some sort of trauma, how hard is it to learn that having to push the boundaries is part of life now?
Well, you know, I guess the way to explain it is we have a fear-based mind, and the fear-based mind is like a negative concept. You know, I don't want to jump off a cliff, or I won't jump off a cliff, or I won't fall from a chopper, or I don't want to do something that's outside my boundaries. But when you achieve it, you go, wow, that was, you know, insightful. It was thrilling, you know. So to being able to get over those, you know, barriers is just, yeah.
What's your biggest fear?
Mine?
Yeah.
Losing sight, not having a loving relationship, losing my children. Yeah.
That seems like pretty normal fears, though, other than your sight, of course. But I think the rest of it seems pretty normal.
Yeah, but once again, it comes down to the context. You know, you look at my life course, my life changes. You know, I sit here in front of you with, you know, loss of limbs, you know, hearing impaired, visually impaired, and I have learnt to appreciate life for what I have from what I've been through. At the same time, you know, I've made a lot of changes to move to Brisbane that have impacted on me and my family, you know. So nothing's ever easy, nothing. You know, and it's funny, we talk about people, clients, families, and we talk about a condition, but when you start talking about people with, you know, complex situations or cases, you know, in my case, you know, I have physical and sensory issues, conditions. And we can over-analyse them. And like we're talking about, you know, we have a fear-based mind. You know, yes, I have these conditions. And that's where we've got to try to, you know, have that mindset to turn it over and have that behaviour where we can go, these are the positives of it. I get to live today, you know, a neurohack, as they call it, you know. I get to see my son come home, you know. I get to go to work. You know, I get to go for a cycle. I get to, because there's a lot of people that don't get to cycle. So it's about changing that fear-based mind, especially in my complex situation, where I can get to do it.
It's a big thing to know what your biggest fears are. A lot of people don't know that.
Well, it's funny. You ask, what's my biggest fear? You know, and I said, yeah, loss of sight, you know, not being able to see my kids and things, because they are very personal to me. From what I've seen through life, from where I've been, from my losses, they are my biggest things. I'm not fearful of death. I'm not fearful of, you know, snakes or anything like that. I'm not fearful of that. My fear is not being able to give my children the opportunity to see me for who I am because of my losses. I know who I was. My children know who I had been. But it's now accepting who I am and trying to have society accept me as well. Because in my circumstances, and Mason can definitely, and my other two can definitely vouch for this, when we walk through the community, you're looked at. You are looked at differently. People pass comments. So when we talk about support, that's probably the biggest thing, you know, when we move into society or different cultures and that it all impacts on you strategically.
Is that hard?
When you ask me that question, there's 3 stories that come at heads, and they're all different parts of my life. So the first one is, you know, in the early stages after I was wounded and things like that. I remember with Mason, my oldest son, Kyron, we were walking through, you know, to a soccer game. I think Mason had a soccer game. And as we were walking through these fields and that, I had my 2 boys with me. I was trying to hold their hand or whatever. And these kids came up and they turned around and they were looking at us and they were yelling and they were going, "Oh, look at you. You've only got one arm. You've only got this."
Wow.
And I felt ashamed. I
Wow.
felt, lost. And I was angry. So I just turned around and said, "Look at you. Too bad your parents haven't taught you any fucking manners," And my boys laughed at it and they said, "Good on your dad," type thing. But I was angry and I was annoyed that it wasn't so much the kids, but the parents didn't say anything. And then, so that was this one scenario.
So they were with their parents.
Yeah, well, they were somewhere close by and things like that. So, so my life impacts on my children's life, like I just gave an example. So, my fear is my kids being ashamed with me. And I know that, at some point, kids will always be ashamed or don't want to be with their parents. Nothing wrong with that. But in my case, because I look differently, physically, facially and all that stuff, I'm more of an attraction. The other thing, I remember I was out on a date and I was explaining to my partner at the time that, people watch me when I eat. People watch when I do things. And she goes, "Oh, I think it's all in your head," and we're out on a date. And credit to her, these people were watching me. And then she turned around and said, "Instead of watching, would you like to ask them a question so we can enjoy this dinner by themselves?" And then, so carers also get affected like that way as well, or partners, whatnot. And then, the recent one is when I ended up moving down here in Brisbane. I was, my daughter's 4, and everything's about building rapport and love and nurturing with your sibling or your kids. And I was at a park with her because I want to be seen normal. I want to be interacting and I want to be able to do it. And I want to be seen it. Anyway, I was at the local park and I was playing, and kids always come up and ask me, "Oh, what happened and what do you do?" And
Is that okay when they do that?
Oh, it honestly doesn't bother me. And my story has always changed through my life course. I think at the beginning, a shark bit my arm because I didn't know, I didn't know how to explain it to people. And then I got more comfortable with myself and how to explain my situation. But this one particular day, I was down there playing with my daughter. And sometimes you just want to play with your kids. Sometimes you don't even want to listen to kids, or you don't want to have people looking at you, but you just ignore it. And on this particular day, I was playing with my daughter, Ella, and one of the kids came up and goes, "Oh, wow, what happened to you?" And I said, "I got blown up at work, mate." He goes, "Oh, wow, that sounds awesome." I said, "Oh, no, not really, but no. So that's what happened." Anyway, the mother came up and said, "Can you not tell my son that?" And I went, "Sorry?"
Really?
And she said, "He doesn't need to know that." And I went, "Well, I'm sorry." And turned around to the son and said, "I was injured in the military and I got my ass handed to me." And then I looked at her and I said, "Is that better?" Because there is no right way to say it. And you know what? We talk about equality. People talk about, physical conditions versus mental health conditions. Physical conditions you can see, it's the invisible conditions. That's a whole different story. But being put in a position in front of your children, in front of your family, in front of your partners or whatever relationship you have, and being asked, what's wrong with you, actually brings about depression and brings back, your symptoms of anxiety, PTSD or whatever. But you've got to be accepting and you've got to develop with it and get along with it and overcome the diversity of it. I can't say that over my life course, my story, 2 children and parents have changed. But the thing I can say is when I was going through my university as OT is people just need to be upfront. People just need to ask. And the example I give is, I was doing a placement at Townsville Hospital and I had my supervisor walking along the side of me. Anyway, we're heading back to the office and there's a gentleman off on the deck and he was in a wheelchair. He had lost 1 or 2 legs, bilaterally amputated or unilaterally. Lost a leg. Anyway, we were walking past and I said, "Hey mate, how you going?" He goes, "Yeah, good." And we just got in a bit of a chat, and to start a bit of the conversation, I said, "Oh, it looks like you're a bit legless." And he laughed and he goes, "Oh, you look like you're a bit armless," and we had a bit of a laugh, we giggled and we kept talking, and then as we kept walking, the supervisor just said, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that." And I went, but he got something from it. Like when people are afraid to ask questions, when people are afraid to come up and acknowledge someone, that's what hurts. You know, people just want to be seen normal. People would rather you just come up and say, hey, mate, you know, what happened, you know? The very first time I got back to Australia, which was the 11th of the 11th, Remembrance Day, there was so much going on, but I eventually, a month later, got into a home or a hotel with my wife at the time. And as we were going into the elevator, a cowcocky came in as well, the elevator as well. And I was blind at the time. And he turned around and goes, holy crap, mate, looks like you've been through war. And I went, literally. And it was the best thing because I could just say, I was, mate, you know, and I was able to share, you know, with him. He goes, oh, wow, sorry to hear. I said, no, it's all good. No, it's fine. But it was just an open, pure conversation with no hidden agenda, no thoughts or anything. He was open, he was interested, and he was willing to engage. You know, when people start hiding behind their thoughts and their emotions, and because people with losses, you know, sensory can pick up on other sensory issues more quickly than others, it hurts. You know, like I was saying, you know, you're out on a date and you're observing what's going on. You know, in my case, I've got PTSD. I'm very observant what's happening around me, and you see people looking at you, or you're walking down the streets with your kids. Instead of people looking, well, instead of staring, come and, you know, say something. You know, don't take my time away from my children by staring at me. Take my time by asking me a question and then moving on. Things have changed, and things change over lifespan, and they'll probably continue to change how I tell people how I was blown up. But I'll be honest now. I'm not going to say that a shark took it or anything like that.
And neither you should.
Well, and I think that's the thing. It's about the person being comfortable with who they are, how the injuries happen, and that. And you know, the community and society has changed, where that, you know, the society and community has become more open to veterans. You know, when you look at the Vietnam era, it's totally different to when we were, you know. And again, you know, from, you know, the Gulf War to Afghanistan and so forth, it has constantly developed. And that's because of the good work of the RSL, ECO groups, and, you know, the community being more accepting of, you know, the first responders, the police and the ambulance and that, because they understand that are traumatic events that affect them. So, you know, things do get easier. But, you know, there are individuals, and that's what we need to understand. There are individuals that are just individuals that you don't need to know. You don't want to know because they're not going to bring me down. It's your balls. And that example that I used with that lady, you know, questioning me in the park, it actually, the strength I found in that was because I had been moved to Brisbane. I said, stuff it, I'm writing a blog. And I put it up on social media because it wasn't just that, because I was trying to get into the dating side of things again. And I tell people who I am, they would go, I don't want anything to do with you. Oh, sorry, this isn't going to work. So really? I get judged based on being open, being very honest and saying, yeah, I am passionate, I am lovable, I have feelings, I am normal. But as soon as you're saying you've lost injuries and this has happened, oh, sorry, we don't want to get to know you. So, you know, the park, the dating thing made me drive this blog, and I wrote this blog to my community to say, this is who I am. This is what happened. If you see me in the streets, instead of staring, come up and say g'day, or at least you know the facts, you know, because it was hurtful. And sometimes we can underplay what hurt is, but emotionally, when you look at your feelings and your thoughts, it actually puts you in a down, you know, it brings you back to a relapse. You know, so that was the strength I got of it, and I felt pride from doing that because, once again, I was uncomfortable doing it, but I had to do it, not just for me, but for my children, because I didn't want to keep walking down to that main street or go to that park again to be put in that position. So it was hard, like we were talking about barriers before, trying to choose what is right and how to take that on for me and how to express myself.
Mate, it hurts me to hear that you're having to deal with that. Are there some people, though, a percentage of people that go, take you on face value and just go, yep, you're a good guy?
Look, you know, all my friends that know me, they say, oh, wow, you're inspiring, you know, you do so much. And then, you know, I left a lot of those friends back in Townsville, and I've come here and I'm trying to build on a new social group in Brisbane, and I have met a lot of these people. A lot of people go, tell me your story. Wow, that's incredible. You know, I used to do a lot of motivational speaking, and because of my my mental health has reduced, and me trying to prioritize my work and social and my children as a single father, I haven't been able to get back into that. But I've been able to, learn who I am, and the people that I'm meeting do seem to accept me for who I am. And the thing I've had to relearn is the people that don't accept me for face value, well, I don't need them in my life. And I hope that I get to find someone that goes, you know what, yeah, we want to go mountain bike riding. I accept the way that you look. I accept people staring at you, or I'm happy to help you, So there are good people out there, and that's what I mean. There are individuals out there that I don't want to know because they make those comments. Well, if you don't want to know me because I've been honest and up clear, and you don't want to know how passionate I am and how, passionate I am and how I want to live my life and get out and do things, well, that's your loss, mate. And that's what I mean. When on the dating site, it was two particular women that, ring a bell, and and there's more, but you just accept it, and that's what I mean. It's hard, and that comes back in, you talk about mental health, physical health, it's an invisible injury. I understand mental health is invisible, but when we look at physical as well, it impacts highly as well on your mental health. And then when you have both, well, yeah, it's more complicated, especially in my job, and that's what I mean. You really got to sit down and understand, the individual, the insurer, and try to build on things. So, yeah.
You had a conversation in an elevator with a cowcocky, and you talked about how you got your injuries. Let's, if we can, visit that. How did it all happen?
All right, so I was in the army for 20 years. I grew up as an army brat being someone that, came from an army family. My father was in the military for 21 years. We moved around a lot, so we never really had a home, although I call Ipswich my home because that's where I spent my secondary schooling. At the age of 16, I joined the army, had my 17th birthday down at Kapuka. Fortunate enough to get into the Corps of Choice, which was combat engineering. Loved that job. From there, I ended up specialising in bomb disposal. Did numerous deployments, and then on my last deployment, which was in Afghanistan, as a troop sergeant and EOD tech light, we went out on my last mission, and I had to render safe, or attempted to render safe, an IED, and trying to render safe the IED at the time, I thought, the best way to do it, because I was called what they referred to as a WIT team as well, was to gather intelligence, and I thought I had the time to, exploit the site and gather the intel as I needed. And I thought, I cut what needed to get cut at the time, not to go into too many procedures. But I ended up finding what they call a tech killer, or an anti-disturbance switch. And obviously that disturbance switch, initiated the main charge.
How does that work, the anti-disturbance switch? How is it when you're going through the ground? Can you describe what you're finding and how they set these things up?
Yeah, well, I don't want to go into too many procedures because, it's a bit of SOCOM and things like that. But what I can say is when you look at an IED, there's, 5 components. An IED usually has a battery source, a main charge, and a detonator and all this other stuff. Anyway, so when I went in, I got rid of the main charge or main battery source, which I thought I'd found. I left the main charge, and normal drills kicked in. You got to continue exploitation to make sure there's no secondary devices and there's no other batteries. This anti-disturbance switch was drilled into the T6 mine, which is about 6 kilos of explosive. I was actually drilled into it, so the secondary power source was inside as well. And when I ended up going through my exploitation, I initiated that switch. And therefore, the switch had a battery source, which the battery source was connected to the detonator internal. It initiated, defragated the main charge. So not 6 kilos went off, but maybe 1 or 2 went off, which was enough to blow me back. Obviously, it blew me back, and I lost my right arm, thumb and index finger on my left hand. I lost my right eye, visually impaired in the left eye. The positive out of that, my number 2 wasn't on site. He was witness to everything. The 3 and 4, obviously, they were out of harm as well. But the number 2, Warren, he was able to give me aid in that. And out of the actual incident itself, it was tough, because when hit my back, I got blown back, I thought everything was normal, adrenaline set in, and it's not what you see on the movies. And I said to Warren, yeah, it's all good, mate, I'll start clearing the way out, and you said, no, sit where you are and do it, don't move. And I just sat up, and I didn't realise the extent by the time he got to me. I just remember leaning on him. He had been holding my head together, and it wasn't until 48 minutes later until I got morphine. But before the 48 minutes, there wasn't much pain, but I started blacking out because of blood loss. And for him to keep, I remember saying to him, mate, I'm starting to feel pain. And he just said, what I said to him, I'm starting to feel pain. I'm going to talk through my foot taps and that. And he agreed, and I was tapping, and then I must have losing consciousness or something. And he turned around and he started talking about fishing. And it just sparked a spark in me, and I went, fuck fishing, I hate fishing, it's the worst sport, I can't ever catch it. And it just got the adrenaline and that going again, and he kept talking about me and my sons going fishing, and it kept me going. And then we eventually got some morphine, and around an hour 4, the chopper flew in. I remember getting put onto the door. My mate's giving me, I was put onto a door, put into the Chinook, into the Black Hawk, and then flown back. And when I got put it into the Black Hawk, I remember the downwind. So and that was a trigger, and I didn't realise that was a trigger to me until I started working as an OT in aviation. But then when I landed by the time I landed in TK, I'd blacked out and that again. And when I landed in TK, we hit the deck, and I came to again, and I had a mate, Brian, that pulled me out, and he was with me for that time. So I was supported all the way through. And then I was in TK for, I think, 24, 48 hours before I was thrown to another place, and then I ended up going to Germany. And then in Germany, I was there for a week. And then after that, I was thrown back to Australia, like I said, on the 11th, via Qantas. Massive headlines, obviously, back then, because the first seriously wounded regular soldier and all this stuff, a lot of, media and all that. And I had to go on an alias. And then when I landed back into...
Why did you have to do that?
Well, everyone wanted to know about me. Everyone wanted to know what happened, and the Army had to give me an alias to reduce a lot of, the pressure put on the family and myself. And it was very emotional, because I remember when I got to the hospital,
take your time.
My brother was there, hadn't seen him, and it was just a rush of feelings and that, because throughout the whole course, from being blown up, I thought I was going to die, and I kept saying to my mates, this is what happened, this is what's happening, and so forth, this is how I blew up, this is what happened. So I thought I was going to die, and I didn't want the mistake to happen again, and I wanted, as wit, I wanted them to exploit it further and find things out. But when I landed in Australia, I finally got home, and I remember breaking down with the Qantas crew, thanking them. When I got given to Alexander, I remember, wow, I'm home, I'm settled, But that's when the barriers started happening. And I got to hug my brother, and I was outside the Alexander Hospital where all the Army staff, the nurses were to introduce, and my wife was exhausted at the time. She was, incredible. But she was exhausted. She had to go away, and I didn't know, but I got taken into another room and put with the nurses and looked after. And then my wife came to me and she said, how are you going? What's happening? And we all, came back together, and I said, how are you going? And she goes, good, but this is what was said. And I went, what? And the Chief of Army, RSM at the time, apparently turned around to her and said, look, we don't know how to cope with this. We don't know what to do. This is the first time we've had something like this. And that hurt, because I put her in a position where she was lost, where she had no control. I was injured, and I wasn't able to help her after you had these commanders tell them that. And I just remembered, my father coming in saying, we've got all these people willing to support you, help you. I said, good. I want a meeting in, 2 days, whatever I said. I want everyone there. I want everyone there. I want the military. I want the doctors there. We're going to sort this out now. Anyway, I called this meeting together, and reminding everyone that I was blind at the time. I couldn't see anything, and we're all sitting there, and I had my wife, God bless her for the times, and my father sitting there, and I said, all right, everyone knows who I am. Let's go around the circle and you introduce yourself and what you're going to be willing to provide. This one doctor apparently introduced herself. I can't remember if she was standing up or not, and she introduced herself as, the upper limb pathesis specialist who can give you orthobotics and all that, and said, I'm doctor, whatever, this is what my role is, but I don't think we can offer you anything because, you have no feeling, or whatever she said. And I said, thank you, doctor, whatever. Thanks for introducing yourself, but you can leave. That's not what I want to hear. And the whole room, like, you could have heard crickets, it just went quiet. And I turned to my wife, my father, and said, has she left yet? And she goes, no. And I said, excuse me, I asked you to leave. And she actually left. And then I said, next. And then we went around the whole room hearing what I needed to hear. And it's funny because that's what probably put me into my OT role now, because I started taking charge then, I heard what I wanted to hear. I was being told that I couldn't be home at Christmas. I was being told that, I'd have to live in a hospital for the next few months. And people just weren't listening to me. Military, doctors, the whole lot. And we had to, when I say we, my wife and I had to keep fighting, and I had the support of rehab consultants and occupational therapists behind me, giving me insight to what was happening behind the scenes. And I remember going to the military base, or driving to a military base on a particular day, and we got this phone call, and this OTRC rehab consultant called and said, it's Michael there, can we put it on speaker? And she goes, Michael, do you know why you're going to Enoggera Hospital and that? I said, yeah, we're going to sort out me going home. And he said, no, they're going to ask you to stay with the hospital. And my wife and I was trying to get myself to live with my wife, who was in an apartment, so use it as a staging process. We can prove that, she can help me, she can look after me, she's willing, I'm willing, and then get back to home where my family was, where my support was. And she said, no, they want you to live with them. They want you to live in the hospital, have the nurses and that look after you. And
For how long?
Who knows? So to me, it was slowing the whole process down. Anyway, I was so angry, and my wife said, Michael, do not get out of that car, do not wait for me and that. Anyway, we pulled in the hospital, and she said, Michael, everyone's out here to greet you, do not get out of the car, there's a gutter, you're going to fall over. Anyway, me being, because we've been facing so many barriers already, and doctors telling me not to go home, I wasn't getting correct medication, I was in pain, I was still accepting and wanting my own things, and people weren't listening to me. Anyway, as soon as we pulled up, of course, I opened up the door, tripped over this gutter. My wife, Katri, said, oh God, and this doctor came up, goes, Michael, I've got you. And I said, I don't need your help, and I know exactly who you are. Just leave me alone, And then we went into this meeting, and the lieutenant colonel of the military hospital at the time introduced and said, this is what we want. We want you to stay with us. We've got nurses, we've got that. And I said, let me remind you who I am. I've been in a hospital for the last, month. I want to go home. I will be home at Christmas to spend it with my children. I do not need an 17-year-old nurse wiping my ass, changing my bandages when I have a wife and I am capable of doing it. I want to live with my wife for a week. I want to prove to you that I can do this. I am going to be home. And there's a lot of, back and forth and, and they said, we'll have to think about it and that. So, I went back to Alexander's, and then we got the phone call and they accepted it. And they said, fine. So I was in this hospital. I was in the hospital, and then I ended up living with my wife in this apartment for a week. And whilst I was living there, she was changing the bandages. I had these other machines and that on me. Whilst that was happening, I had to go to doctor's appointments. She would take me to her, and we were self-managing. We were doing a good job. And she was doing a great job. And during that time, my sight started coming back. And when I said start coming back, it was black and grey and white. I couldn't see colour, I couldn't see far. It was very hazy. But there was some sight coming back. And I had just sent my wife and mother at the time to go and look for Braille books. And we've got to accept that I'm not going to see. But when they came back in, I said to Mum, oh, God, I hate that dress. And it didn't click with her. And then she turned around and went, what? And I went, yeah, So that was a moment. And then at the end of the week, the doctors, the military doctors and Lieutenant Colonel came and visited us at my wife's apartment. And turned around and said, "Oh, would like to speak to you. Great to see you doing so well, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to see us off out the elevator?" So she walked out with them at the elevator, and then she came back in. I was sitting there with my father. I think we were doing something we weren't meant to be, which is drinking a beer because you just wanted to relax. And my wife, Katri, came back in, and I said, "Oh, how'd that go?" She goes, "Good." And she goes, "You won't believe what they said again." I went, "What?" And they said, "We're expecting you to fail. We didn't think this was happened, but well done. Credit to you and that." And I'm just going, all you hear is constant barriers. You hear that you can't do this. You can't hear that because it's that fear-based mind, or people want to be seen doing the right thing. People forget about the individual. People forget about the family. And people were thinking, this massive, incident, we've got this soldier that needs his help. They need this, they need that. He's a national icon right now. We need to be seen doing the right thing. Well, take 2 steps back, look at it from the bottom up approach and see what the person wants. Anyway, to hear the army say that, we don't know how to cope this, no one really trying to take charge, people telling you where to go, you won't be home, we proved them all wrong. And we got home at Christmas, and when we got home, I had to, be at home and be in a hospital. And I guess the big thing out of that, I think it was 2 months after being injured, I was back at work. I was back at work for myself, and that was the failure that I had to learn. I went back to work 2 months after my incident to show my men that I was okay. I wanted to prove for them I was good. And when I was in hospital in Brisbane, every week they would send flowers to my wife. They'd send chocolates to my son, because that was a hard moment. If I could go back, my son at the time, Kyron, he was 7. And one of the hardest things to accept was him not wanting to be with me.
But that's not the case.
No. He was just hurt, worried, because obviously he had the door knock, he had the padre and all that. He heard his dad was wounded. Anyway, I was in hospital blind and that, and I'd try to coach him over, come sit with me, and Katri would say, "Oh, he's just standing at the door, he doesn't want to come in, he doesn't want to be near you." And it took days for him to get close. Anyway, eventually we got him on the bed, and he wouldn't sit on the bed for very long. But that all hurts, and that was part of the treating process. And it took a lot, and it was good for me to get back to Townsville to build on those relationships. But I got back to work, and part of the process was to be living at home and to be in a hospital as well. Anyway, so my wife went back to work, and she was having her own problems with Townsville Hospital and all that stuff, because of the amount of time that she was away, which the Army did a great job there again as well. They supported her and they spoke on her behalf to the Townsville Hospital. So there's a lot of collaborating and people trying to be understanding, and there was the right support coming in at some places as well. But anyway, the significant point of me being in the Townsville Military Hospital is that I met this OT. Her name was Fiona, and she came into my room, and I didn't know she was there because I couldn't see too well. And she was watching me apparently, and she goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to write. I'm learning to write again. I need to write. I need to be able to articulate and all that." And she goes, "Oh, okay, you seem to be doing good and that." I said, "I can't see it, but it's a matter of gripping the pen and trying to learn to write." Anyway, we just started building, and she was just this other person I thought that was going to cause me trouble and give me barriers. I don't need you to tell me I can't be at work. I don't want to hear this. I know what I want to do. I'm being seen at work. I'm at a hospital right now, but I'll be at work. Anyway, the thing that she said, she was leaving, she said, "Is there anything that I can do for you?" And I just brushed her off and I said no. But as she walked out the door, I called her back, said, "Fiona, I actually do have something for you." I said, "I would like a workstation put in this room with a computer, with a desk, with a chair, so I can learn to write, how to use a keyboard and that." She goes, "I don't think we can do that." And I went, "Not what I want to hear. I've asked you to go and get me this. So if you can do it, that'd be great." Expecting her to fail. Anyway, I was off in the workplace doing PT, doing push-ups in a sand bucket and all this other stuff.
I don't want you to brush it aside, because there's a few things I do want to revisit that you've just brushed aside, because I think it's important.
That's fine.
Running around with the bucket, tell us what had happened there.
So like I said, I went back to work at 2 months. I still had my troops over in Afghanistan, and I wanted to prove to them that I was still able. I wanted to show them that I was good, because I had a very strong bond with, my 30 men. and there was a lot of guilt that I had put on them. I had my best friend on the radio, him having to call through the Kazovacs and, all that stuff. So I had a lot of guilt, and I wanted to prove to them that I was still Michael, I was still Lids. So I got back to work, and one of the things was to build on my fitness, because I became so weak and lost so much definition. I thought, well, I wanted to get into PT. And the people at the time, massive support, Rob Sanders, who was a massive support in Brisbane, and he helped me achieve a lot. And the reason I say to go back to him is because he's now deceased too, unfortunately. But Rob and his wife Gail gave me so much support in Brisbane. And when we got back into the workplace, he was there to support me. You want to go to PT? Go, Michael. He gave me exactly what I wanted. And through that, I learnt to fail. So, for me to go for a run, I couldn't see, or could barely see, and I had two soldiers on my left and right making sure that I did not trip for the soldier in front that I could hold, and he enabled it, So you ask about the bucket, we'd be running up a hill or running along a track, stop, we've got to do sit-ups, push-ups. So we do the sit-ups, and I'm doing the sit-ups, and then we get to the push-ups. The reason for the bucket is because my hand was still in a bandage, and I needed to somehow equal and give myself that ability to do a push-up. So understanding the biomechanics and what I'd lost, I said, I want a sand bucket, and people looked at us differently, but I was able to do push-ups. So, one of the things that came back, I ended up getting part of, liaising with the troops overseas. I had this video conference. I said, I made sure that they had word that I was out doing PT and I was doing push-ups. So one of the things when you get back is you need to be able to beat my number of push-ups, because I was pretty much seen as a hard-ass sergeant that would send people up with hills with rocks and all this stuff. So when you come back to Afghanistan, you better be doing 50 push-ups, because if I can do it with one hand, you can. And they went, what? You can do 50 push-ups with one hand? I didn't tell them how I was doing it, because I still had to learn how to do one-handed push-ups, but I was still at medical appointments, had my arms in bandages. So the sand bucket was to help me to build strength in my upper body and able to do it. So everything that I did came from my initiative with the support of Rob and all the soldiers around me to enable me to build strength and to build my own identity again. So that's where the sand bucket came into it.
How inspirational were you to them at that stage?
I think because there was so much guilt from me, and I'm not sure how they felt. I think they felt a lot of sorrow in that as well, because that's why the flowers and chocolates were sent. But I think from what I heard in the video conference we once had, they were inspired and they were grateful that I was alive. Because we had, before we went to Afghanistan, we were at Malaysia, we had all these other things that we were doing. So we had a strong rapport. So the people, I believe, overseas, I think they were grateful to hear that I was doing well and that. But the people that were around me at the time, I think were inspired. Wow, he's getting out and doing this. But I was also reliant on them, because I want to take pressure off my wife, who was trying to work, still help me manage, work on my son. And I'd get a duty driver to pick me up, at this time, because I couldn't see. Pick me up from home, take me to work. So the soldiers were very supportive and wanted to know what was happening overseas, what happened. They wanted to know, and they wanted to let me know their story. So it helped me as well. Although the soldiers were inspired and that, there was also the opposite. And I remember this one particular day getting picked up from home, taken into work, and the duty driver said, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "What?" And he goes, "Why are you working? You don't need to. You're compensated. You can just live a normal life. You can just don't come to work." And I said, "That's got no meaning to me, mate. It means nothing." I said, "I'd rather be seen at work, be there for my, mates, for my team. But compensation, fuck DVA, it means nothing." And that angered me, because that was his perception, The other thing is, when I recall as well, like I said, the media, the society didn't understand Afghanistan too much at that time as well, back in 2007. And a lot of the negative feedback that was still happening in Townsville was hearing doctors in the Townsville hospital saying, "Oh, you copped what you deserve," blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of negativity in the culture, in the society, that there's so much. And, and that's what I was saying to you, I need to write a book and all this stuff, but so much has happened, and you forget it, and it all comes back to you when you start. I don't go out talking about this stuff, but When you hear all the negative things, it does add and drives me to the successes I've had. And, like I was saying, Rob really helped me to achieve and prove myself. He allowed me to get back to work. The commanding officer who was overseas at the time would come back and he saw me, and when he came back and got back to Australia because he was leading forces over there, he helped me. And I remember the conversations Dave Wainwright had. I said, I'm up here in ops, but I want to go back to the troop. I want to be down in the troop. I want to be the troop sergeant again. He goes, I don't think you can. You can't see, you can't read out the names, you can't do it. I said, but let me do it. And he goes, okay, all right. So he let me go back down to the troops from the role that I was doing, which was an ops role with support. So I went back down to the troop and I tried being the troop sergeant. I must have been down there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So my job was, to organise administration, do roll calls and that. And it was very hard with no sight, with the limited sight I had.
Was it coming back?
It was coming back. The sight was coming back, and I was getting grafts, and I had medical appointments. So during this time when I was getting back to the troops, you had to remember, I was still getting picked up to and from work. I still had medical appointments. I still wanted to be with my men. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be down there. So I went back down to the troop, and I was doing what I thought I could do. But then after 2 or 3 weeks, I had to go back to Dave and go, I can't do it. So he let me fail, but I also had to accept my failure to succeed. So I said to him, I can't do this. Can I go back to ops? And I had to accept that loss, part of my journey, part of my recovery and everything, and that was very hard. So I had to go back to ops. And in the process, I kept doing my job. My sight slowly returned, and then, it was just the small things. I still kept facing barriers. Dave at the time, my sight had returned significantly where I didn't want the duty driver to pick me up anymore. I decided to cycle to work. One eye, my sight wasn't the best. I got myself to work. I got myself home. Anyway, Dave found out that I was cycling, and he stopped it. He goes, you can't do it. It's unsafe. It hasn't been approved. And I went, I don't care. This is what's happening. And because he knew of the pain and all the barriers I had faced, he said to me, if you keep, because, I could have been charged. Yep, I'm going to charge you. You're going against a lawful order, lawful command. He didn't. He just said, if you don't stop, I'm going to take money. You will not get paid. And that hurt because that will impact my family more.
Sure.
So I ended up reading this Fiona OT and said, you can't believe what just happened. This is what's happened. I want an assessment. You need to come out and assess me. And she goes, what? I said, okay. So a week later, her and this lady, Sarah, came out and they assessed me riding a bike and they deemed me competent, if you want to put it as such. And that gave me the confidence to go, well, screw you. I'm riding to and from. And that's where things really, started kicking off from that moment because I was able to cycle a bike. I was able to prove things wrong. And, and then I decided to get back into swimming. And, that created barriers. I was always a good swimmer. I still have my PTSD, depression and that. And it was hard to be accepted in society from my perception. Hearing the negative comments from doctors and soldiers and not being able to succeed or to be who I was, I had to take a step to get to the pool. And I had to work out, I'll have to do a taxi because work's not going to pay for it. I can't do it. And it was late. And I took this massive step. All right, I'll go to the pool. I'll get a taxi to do it. My wife said, we don't need to be doing this, but I need to find who I am. And, you could imagine, after, 15 years of growing up fully abled and being able to do it, I lost my identity. I was a blue collar, I was physically able and I'd lost everything and I wanted to go back to the pool. And I got to the pool and, so much anxiety, so much hurt and so much questioning was going on. And, I built on swimming. And the reason it's important is because, once again, it was that barrier I had to overcome this time because it was my thoughts and feelings and, being accepted. But I thought I was doing something great. And then the taxi driver, goes, one day, because, I usually hook up with the same one. We build up a rapport. Then I got this new one. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to the swimming. I'm getting better. I'm going to swim Maggie to Townsville. He goes, what? Won't you swim in a circle? Or swim in circles? I said, what? I said, no, mate. No, I'm just as able as everyone else. And it just drove me further. So I kept swimming, and then I ended up doing a crossing from, Maggie to Townsville. And when I was successful in that, it wasn't enough. And then I had to go out and do the Rockness swim, So it put more hours and stress on the family and me, but it put stress on the family, but I was trying to find out who I was, And the impacts on children and family was massive, There's so many circumstances my wife and I had split, and I just remember, it's just the small things. And one of the small things was, me not being able to wash dishes properly. My wife wanted me to put them in the dishwasher or she would do them, but I wanted to take the pressure off her. I don't want her to do them, so I wanted to wash the dishes. We'll stick them in a dishwasher. No, I don't want to stick them in. I want to be able to feel the sensation of warm water and being able to do it properly. So I was pig-headed. She wanted the dishes done properly. I wanted to feel. I wanted to do it. So there's those stresses. There was media. There's work and that. And, we're talking about caregiver strain. I lost my identity. I was trying to rebuild who I was. She remembered who I was. Conflict of interest, I guess you could say, with media and society. So we grew apart, And, university, I wanted to go to uni. She didn't want me to go to uni,
Why not?
Well, once again, people have this perception, life is about taking what's given to you. Compensation. You've been compensated for this, I agree with her, it would have been a more comfortable life sitting at home, looking after raising the kids, but would I have been happy? I don't know. And that was the question I couldn't answer for myself. Is this who I'm going to be for the rest of my life? Sitting at home raising kids not realizing who dad can be. And, she didn't say you can't go to university, but like I said, when you look at the dynamics of things, me trying to do the dishes, me wanting to do more for the kids, me wanting to go, it put a strain on her too. And we probably could have communicated better. We could have done it. And, me attending medical appointments, we just broke down, and I would never, ever take anything away from her for what she gave me, for what she has given me, because she did a marvelous job. And unfortunately, our relationship is very hostile now, we can talk, but it's very black and white, We've got 2 kids, but, it just grew apart because I had to find out who I was again.
Have you?
I have, I am Michael Lydiard. I am a soldier, but I'm also an occupational therapist. And the confliction there is who I was and who I am. I hear even yesterday when I was working, you don't have PTSD, or you don't have the level of PTSD that I have. People have no idea how I wake up. People have no idea how I sleep. People have no idea the hardship I put myself through to get at work, But I know the importance of it. And I was talking to my son, we had a 2.5 or 2 hour drive up here, and we had a great chat up here, and I said, it's exhausting. It is exhausting. 3 fingers, 1 eye, trying to build on a relationship, with your daughter, and, trying to build on relationships and work, and trying to deal with society or social pressures. It gets tiring, But it's also rewarding knowing that I can do it like a normal person, My ex-partner, for whatever reasons, and I'm not going to disclose them, why we end up going our way, we went to my daughter's school, to enroll her. Anyway, because of the reasons we end up going our way, I bent down to pick up some papers and that, and I realised I need to do something on my phone. So I checked the phone, and she said, would you like me to pick up the papers? I said, no, it's right, I've got it. And she goes, Michael being Michael. And I said, fuck you. And it's not because I didn't appreciate her reaching out. It was because of our history and what I felt or feel that she had done wrong to me, and me maintaining barriers. So I'm always trying to worry and build on relationships that I have and want to be seen normal and want to do all that stuff. But for anyone, well, we're all normal. Life is tough. And when you're a single mum, a single dad, and you're building the relationships with your children and making sure they've got the best education, and then you put on your lower back pain, or you put on, a loss of function, or you can't get up in the morning to take them to the sport, well, that's tough on that individual. But you look at it at the same time with me, where I can't see too clearly these days, and I've got to magnify things, anything, it's a lot tougher. I've got to adapt to everything. And one of the most exhausting things with my life is, pre-positioning or pre-preparing for everything. So I try to think ahead. To come up here, I needed to make sure that, everyone does it, but I have to go that extra scope. Like, it's becoming more natural, make sure the clothes fit you properly, blah, blah, blah. I've got enough clothes and so forth. But because I got 3 fingers, I got minimal sight. I just need to make sure for safety, security, for my son and blah, 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 everything's done and dusted.
Let's go back to Fiona, that workstation.
Oh, yeah.
What happened with the workstation? You've asked her, she's taken off, said it can't be done. What happened?
She goes, I don't know if it can be done, but I'll try. I think that's what her words were. I went, yeah, okay, good on you. And just brushed it off, right? Because I've had enough barriers. Anyway, I went to work, did whatever I was doing, and I don't know, it could have been a week later, so I was going in at a hospital, not seeing any change, not seeing that workstation, not seeing anything. I went to work one particular day, doing my job in ops or doing PT, came back to my room, and there's a workstation with a computer and a pen and paper.
Nice.
She proved herself to me, which was enough to build on a relationship. And that's what I mean. From there, she stayed with me. I kept choosing her. One of the other things that kept happening was I had a doctor that in the military that I came very close to. And he kept helping me, and he and I built a rapport on that, but then he had to move on. And then I got this other doctor, military doctor, and he was Russian or German or something. I couldn't even understand. He said, I don't need this. I don't need to explain my story to you. I'm tired of this. I just want to be normal. Had to put this massive request in, went to Fiona, I want this. And it wasn't being seen as needy. It was wanting to be treated, not having to explain my situation over again. And I ended up getting back to this doctor, which aided me in my recovery, because being given another doctor, although my medical file was there, or we need to go over everything, set me back. So Fiona kept helping me through my recovery, not just with the workplace station, working on, maintaining doctors. I also wanted to get back to EAD work. And that's very critical, because I just told you that I just failed at my troop sergeant role, and I said, well, my sight's gotten back better. I'm now riding to and from. I can be an EAD tech.
So what's an EAD?
So I was bomb disposal. Yeah. So I was
back to it.
Yeah, explosive ordnance disposal. So I wanted to get back to disposing and managing a team. I might not have been able to do the same level, but there's got to be some aspect of it. And the EAD failure rate is huge. So, you might have 12 soldiers going through it and might only have 3 people pass. So it's a very intense course. Not everyone can pass it. Anyway, she goes, look, you can't do it. Think of safety. He said, you got to let me try. Anyway, the EAD guys that were there, all right, let's give this a crack. And once again, it was a lesson of failure where I had to accept and learn. So they set up an EAD task. Was it the right one for me? Probably not. But was it one that was practical? It was. And the reason I say it wasn't the right one for me, because I had to learn my failures, and it was something really simple. We had land ordnance, mortars, and some projectiles just laying on the surface. And I couldn't see them. Because they were green and because they were laying at the grass, I got too close, or because of this, I couldn't read the text. I learned that I couldn't go back to EAD, and I had to accept that. I could wear the badge or whatever, but I had to learn. So Fiona helped me through my successes, but she also helped me through my failures. She helped me through my failures to realize, well, you can't do this, but there's more opportunity for you elsewhere, So, she helped me with the desk, she helped me with doctors, she helped me with understanding that I needed another role. I moved from 3CR into what they call a combat and training center role, where I facilitated all the mission rehearsals for bomb disposal. So I was still playing with explosive, and I was doing this. I had a team around to support me. So I was still well and truly employed, which was fantastic. She helped me get back to, doing what I loved. It wasn't EAD, but I had the qualifications to do this particular job where I was good. And then I guess what really hit the punch next was, I was going through courses, and I ended up going and doing a search advisor course, and I was down there for 2 weeks doing a search advisor course, and I failed a component, which was a critical component, because I couldn't do map to ground. I couldn't read a map. I couldn't do something. Anyway, when the course had finished, I had failed, and everyone said, well, we haven't passed, we've all failed too, because you haven't given Michael the opportunity. He can do this, you just need to give him time or change the TMP to let him do it. So I think we had to stand on a hill and pick points and say these are the things, but I couldn't do that. I had to go to a map, and because that wasn't in the TMP or learning module, you can't refer to a map, well, you failed. So the army wasn't up to scratch then. So I failed that course, and then they said, come back for a retest when we've changed TMP. Yep, I passed that course. So I passed that course. I ended up doing a couple other courses and to become a warrant officer. So I was a sergeant at the time. Anyway, I got to this one particular course, done all my sub 2s and 4s for sergeant warrant officer. So I passed all those warrant officer courses and then got to this one particular course, warrant officer class 1. Started doing all the pre-learning modules, passed that, yep, you've been acknowledged, yep, you can go on the course. And I got a joining instruction sent to me, yep, you're due down here. And so the course was meant to start on the Monday. The unit CTC, which I was with and organising mission rehearsal exercises with, was deploying on the Monday. I had set everything up for them to go ahead with that exercise whilst I was away on this warrant officer course. And on the Friday, because I was going to drive down on the Saturday, on the Friday, I got called into my CO's office. So RSM knocked on the door, goes, Michael, the CO, and I would like to talk to you. Okay, no problems. So I walked in, had a seat, and how's things going? I said, everything's good. All the pre-mission's done. User set. Everyone knows what they're doing for your stick lanes and all that stuff. And I'm just driving down on Saturday, and goes, about that, I want to read this email out to you. And I sat there, and he read, there's no requirement for Sergeant Michael Lydiard to attend the Sub 1 Warrant Officer course or to be promoted to Warrant Officer. And I fucking lost my shit. And the RSM just goes, Michael, this isn't us. This has come from the top. You can't do the course. And I lost it. I was so angry. They just stopped my career progression there and then. And all my performance reviews had been top notch, performing, doing this. I was doing everything that was asked. I was even going through Tully and crawling through the jungle and all that stuff. I was trying to work out ways how to modify the warrant officer course to hold a sword, instead of being on the right hand, it'd be in the left hand. How do I do this, And these were barriers I had to face, but because this email, they just stopped my career progression. So they turned around and they said, you can have the day and that off and that, you don't have to go down next week, just come to the office. I said, no, I'm going bush with you next week. I will go bush with you next week. I just stormed out of the office, got my stuff, all sorted, tell my wife what was going on at the time, and went bush on Monday. And I had a purpose why I was going to bush on Monday, because I wanted to backdoor the system. I wanted to tell everyone what was going on. And I had a lot of support. This is wrong. You should be doing it. And I had wing commanders saying that we're happy to articulate for you or advocate for you. We want to support you. You should be doing this course. You can do this course. But for whatever reason, the TMP or whatever nonsense they did, they said I couldn't do that course or promote it. So it's a big conscience thing, in your losing your identity, because they stopped you from doing a course. They stopped you from being someone that you could have been. And financially, they impacted on my family. You get promoted to warrant officer, more responsibility, more pride, more ownership. But there's also a bit of a pay level that can help my family to have a quality of life that we all hoped to have at the time. So understanding, so this impacted on my relationship with the country as well, because, obviously there was so much going on. Anyway, I was telling everyone, and when I came back from that exercise, which obviously ran really smoothly, there was no incidents or anything, I lost it. I had to take a week off, and I had a relapse and got admitted to hospital. And actually, I'm not quite sure it was then. No, actually, could have been another time. I think actually, no, sorry. So that was what's happening in the background. I went back to work and we did whatever. And then I think a few months later, I got another email saying, Michael, you've been medically discharged. I just went, well, I just, what the hell? And then once again, the CO just said, take some time off. And I was furious because, I had just finished the Rockness Channel swim, came back, been told, you're not doing the warrant officer course, you're not being promoted. I'd been performing 2-3 months later, Michael, you've been medically separated. And I lost it. I said, you're just kicking me out. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that at all. I said, you just gave him my resignation and told me that's it. You're still welcome here, Michael. I said, no, I'm not. I know how the military works. You're telling me I'm Mech 3. You're gone. You're closing the gate. Fuck you. And you need to take the time off. I said, you're damn right I do. Anyway, I went into a massive relapse. Hit the alcohol, hit the smokes, got hospitalised and all that stuff. At the same time, I snapped out of it 2-3 days later, and I said, screw you, you've just put another thorn in, my backside. Called up the TAFE, called up DVA, said, what can you give me? What can you, And then I wrote a report. And I went back to work, a week or a fortnight later with this report in my hand. And they said, oh, what have you decided? I said, this is what I've decided. I'm going to go to university, and if you don't accept it, I'm going to go to the media. I said, oh, we don't know if you can offer this. I said, it's not a discussion. I said, I've got a letter here from the Chief of Army at the time saying I'll always have a job in the military. Yous have stopped my career, yous have done this. And the CO and the RSM really, really understanding, and they really had to probably cop a lot from me. Because seriously wounded soldier, this could go so wrong. The CO rewrote the report, I don't know, whatever he did to it. Anyway, and they changed the whole MEC system. Okay, Michael, you can go to uni. But, and they followed what I wanted, but someone else got the appraisal for it. Someone else got the recognition for it. And I'm the injured soldier that got the, no career advancement. You can't do this course. You're being kicked out. I came up with this plan, to go to university. The CO rewrote the thing. Oh, we need to change the MEC system. Well, it was me that instigated this, but you get the accommodation for it because whatever, I'm not sure 100% it came that way, but anyway, it went to what I wrote. Yep, I'll prove you I went wrong. So the whole MEC system had changed because of myself and a guy called Liam Haven, and I know that because I then had another colonel come up to me and go, because of you and Liam, the MEC system had changed. You're the first one to do this, Michael, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I know, because I wrote the frigging report. Anyway, so I proved them wrong, and it went how I wanted it. So, I was fortunate enough where I was in the military providing a service to a capacity whilst doing, what I called a bridging course. As soon as I passed that bridging course, it was all good. I still maintained my role in the Army, I think, for another 3 years whilst I was at uni. And then the final year of uni, I said, nah, DVA will pick it up. And that's what DVA did for me. In a nutshell, that's what pretty much happened. And that's what I mean. I can sit here and we can go back and forth, but there's been so much. And I guess that's what's created me and built me to who I am. So if we went back to the question, do I know who I am very determined, and I love life. I love living life. I've got to find my life again in Brisbane because it's a different cultural shock, community shock coming from towns that are Brisbane and understanding, obviously how to fit in. You left a majority of your friends, good friends, up in Townsville, and then trying to come to a community that has little understanding. Well, it's not a garrison city. And building on networks with a partner, with a daughter, it's very cordial, very friendly like. And to have your son down here and just trying to build on things,
Would you have made a good way one?
Oh, I believe so, 100%. I was very well respected. I was very well known. I might have been hard, but I was very loyal and very fair. If a soldier didn't want to run up a hill with a rock, he didn't have to, because then he would be doing it with me and I'd be running up the hill with the rock and him carrying a rock. But instead of doing it once, we're now doing it 5 times. So I think that's fair. You made me run the hill. Well, we're going to do it 5 times. So I was fit and I was fair, and I was, I cared about my men. I cared about, the administration and their families. So yeah, I would have made a good way, but I never got an opportunity. So is that something I've had to accept and annoyed with? Yeah, I've accepted it, but it still frustrates me. Yeah.
I want to go back to the injury when it all happened. You were talking about when you were medevaced out. There's what they call the golden hour. You were outside that golden hour and you thought you were going to die. Everyone else did. Talk us through what went through your mind at that stage. You were thinking you were going to die. What happened?
Well, like I said, I was blown back. So blown back and not understanding the concept of what happened, I heard Warren. I spoke out to Warren. And Warren came to my aid. He cleared his way in and he held and looked after me and so forth. And like I said, I just said to him, mate, this is what happened. This is what I did. I prodded, exploded, etc. He goes, I saw it. It's all good. And, although I could hear what he was saying, I kept telling him because subconsciously or consciously, I knew I couldn't live. Because by the time he got to me and I said, man, what's wrong? He goes, mate, you've lost your hand. You lost your head split. He told me. He was holistic. I said, and, he was very open in that. And we had a great rapport. And we speak very often. And maybe, I don't know, maybe after 10 minutes, the pain had started setting in. And that's when, I said, look, I need to talk through my foot and that. And because I was losing consciousness and so forth, I'd always go back, mate, this is what's happening. And my mate, Warren, would say, you've told me this. And he'd try to change the topic. So he'd always continue to change it. And then, like I said, we got to 48 minutes. And the thing is my three and number 4, we didn't have a first aid kit. The first aid kit we had didn't have the morphine because they gave it to the infantry. And at that 48 minutes, that's when the CO and the doctor had walked in and gave me the morphine. And my understanding is they had to wave off a chopper for whatever reason. I had this morphine, and God, I can remember the sensation of the morphine and that's really when you feel calm, and you really do remember it. Oh God, it's cold, but it was fantastic, and it released a lot of pain because Mason asked me, well, can you remember much of it? And I said it was painful. I could still taste the blood, the dirt. I still have the smell. People ask you, what is it? There's no experience, and we might get back into what my thoughts are about hell and God, but there is no expression of what I felt on that day except supported by Warren and my team, and then after getting the morphine, I blacked out a bit, and then I remember getting put onto that door and then put on the chopper. And it's important to note that because I remember coming to the downwind and all that and seeing the guys and saying, seeing you later, because when I became an OT and I ended up working for 5 Aviation, I went through a relapse. I became agitated, I was sweating, I couldn't concentrate, and I didn't know why, and it didn't resonate with me why. I couldn't work it out. And I ended up calling my manager at the time, which was Fiona, because I ended up working for the same company that rehabilitated me. And I said, I can't work. I don't know what's wrong. I went home. Now I'm getting emotional again. But after a day or two, I worked it out. It was because it was the chopper. It was the downwind. It was the jet fuel. When I was at work, there was choppers rotating. There was a jet fuel smelling, and it brought everything back. It literally brought everything back. And Fiona goes, look, take time off. And I went, no, I can't do that. I now know what triggered me. I need to get back. I need to go back. She goes, well, work from the office. I said, no, I can't hide. I can't do that. Let me do it my way. She goes, well, how are you going to do it? And we came up with a compromise. I'll go in there in the morning and we'll build on that tolerance. It was hard for a month, 2 months. I was anxious. I was sweaty. These are the barriers I had to face. We're talking about labels. I didn't want to have that label of PTSD on me. I didn't want to live up to that label. For my own self-recognition and for my own self-worth, to prove to my children, to prove I was self-worth, I needed to come over it, So I gradually built on being in 5 Aviation. Does it still bother me? Well, it does, because I still get emotional about it, and it does bother me, but I have a better idea what my triggers are. I have a better understanding of how to handle it. So that, we're talking about, labels and accepting barriers and failing and all that. It's how much you're willing to push yourself. So probably have high blood pressure and things like that because I keep trying to push myself. But going back to what you were talking about, put onto the chopper at an hour 4 or whatever, and then landed in TK, I was blacked out and I was definitely heavily medicated by then. And I remember coming to and once again telling everyone, this is what happened. And I remember being in a C-130 or Galaxy or whatever it was, and I had my best friend there, and I came to at that time and said, oh, Chris, you're here, because the CO allowed my best mate who was on the radio, they called in all the support, to be with me. And I said, Chris, this is what happened. Bubba goes, mate, you've told us this 20,000 times. It's all good. Just relax, because I didn't understand where I was at that time. After the morphine had hit, after I had hit the ground in TK, after I had Brian looking after me for 48, who never left my side, which is phenomenal again. I just kept telling the story because by that time, I thought I was dead, or I didn't understand what was going on. So by the time we landed in Germany, I landed in Germany. The army allowed my mother and parents to come to Germany as well. And when they came to Germany, I was still hallucinating and saying, this is what happened. But I got to a point where they must have been taking off the medication off me. And I was having these nightmares, and my mum was thinking I was brain dead, and and because all this stuff, and this is where hell and heaven comes into play. But I was having all these memories and all these flashbacks. Everything was happening at once. Anyway, my mum was thinking I was brain dead. Anyway, when I came to, and I was blind, I was more coherent, and I had my wife, Katri, there, obviously emotional and upset. She's upset, and I said, "Hey, how you going?" And I was pretty well good to it. I said, "Come in close." I said something to her, and she goes, "Oh, how you?" She said something to me. I said to her, "Oh, I don't know if it's working. I don't know if it's working." She goes, "What are you talking about? What's working?" I said, "Can you suck my cock? I don't know if it's going to work." And she goes, "Michael, there's doctors standing around. You can't say that type thing." I tried making light out of something because I sensed her hurt and that. And it's one of the things that I could be proud of. Probably not at the right moment to say that, but I was trying to make her happy, and I was more aware of I was and that. And then when I was there, obviously, they kept wearing off the medication. I kept understanding more and more about my injuries. I then started understanding the losses. I couldn't see. I was trying to feel my arms, which were all bandaged. I couldn't feel with my left hand. That was fully bandaged. And that's when all the dreams and pain really started coming in, because the medication was obviously wearing off, but it was the realization of what had happened. And that's when the traumatic feelings and thoughts hit, because, I was grateful that my family was there. I was missing my boys. I realized what I had lost. I realized what I had done. And that's what I mean, and then getting put onto the Qantas jet. I remember being in there and being in so much pain again, and I was embarrassed for it because they blacked out half the aircraft and that for me, or they closed us off. We had passengers in the front end of the aircraft. I had my doctors in that. And I remember I was in so much pain. I had a doctor with me. I had my wife with me, and I just felt guilty for the pain. And they were trying to settle me down and all that, but it was just painful, Anyway, I didn't understand where I was either, but I just felt guilty for the pain and blah, blah, blah. And my wife then told me, "Oh, this, you're in a plane. This is what's happening. This is what," she would talk me through it. So would the doctor. And like I said, when I landed in Australia over 11th, the Qantas pulled up, and the pilot turned around and said, "I would just like to acknowledge in the back, me, the family, and the plane, came to a roar and clapped and did all that stuff, and yeah, good. It made me tearful, it made me joyful, it made me sad, it made me depressed, it made me everything." And that's when I said, "Oh, look, I want to meet the staff and thank them and do all that." So I met the pilot and was grateful. I think I got a photo. I've just lost all the photos, but I got a photo and that with him, and I just remember that moment. I remember coming down the stairs, and I swear I kissed the ground, because there's no such feeling being back home, being back at home and realizing that you're safe, realizing that nothing can happen. There's nothing to be harmful. To realize that you're with people that love you. Yeah, it was overpowering. So, I guess one of the things I want to say is everything that I'm sharing with you is hard. It doesn't come lightly, but I'm sharing it because I don't ever talk about myself, my relationships. My children can tell you that. I don't believe in talking about my military service. One, a bit of shame. Two, I don't really consider myself as a veteran anymore, but I also share it maybe to help others. People to understand that, our diagnoses are diagnoses, but they don't define who we are. I don't talk about myself because, there's probably some shame and there's some guilt.
How could there be guilt with the absolute courage that you've displayed both post-injury and during injury and in your service?
When I was a really young kid, to be honest, I thought I'd die in war. I honestly thought I'd die in war. And it's it's funny because I think of, the movie Saving Private Ryan, the lieutenant, I always wanted to die in war, and that resonates with me because I honestly did think that's the way I'd go.
How old were you when that happened?
When I had that thought, maybe 15. It was just something I'd accept. Oh yeah, I will die. Let it be, and that's what it was. Guilt in the fact that I let things get the better of me. I let the enemy get the better of me. The guilt in the fact that I caused so much harm to others. I caused a lot of heartache to my friends, my mates, my commanders. I put more stress on my relationships. I've caused heartache to my children. I've caused stress to my children. So there is guilt and there's shame in the fact that I am judged because of the way I'm looked at. There's shame because, regardless, we treat people equally. We treat people, we don't. We can talk about individuals, but an individual can be a community too. Like my examples I gave before. So I put that shame and guilt to one side, but every time I look up in the morning and go to the mirror, I'm reminded. I speak about my past relationships and comments that she may have made, or comments have been made by my wife. Comments have been made by soldiers or...
The army held you back. Do you think they blame you for getting injured and in some ways putting them into disrepute because of the adverse publicity that it brought the army?
No, not at all. I don't think that. You know what? The army, you could say, have done some things wrong by me. I feel that they have done wrong by me. But at the same time, the army has made a lot of changes to do the better. And I can say that, from where I was in the army serving and from where I am as an OT, the changes have been good, have been great. Great for the soldier, great for the family. So, from hardship, people do change. Organisations change. And that's where we get growth. So, you do hear, the army doesn't support the soldiers. But when you look back and you compare, even from the stories I heard from the old man being in Vietnam and that to where I served and to where I am now, the changes have been magnificent or significant to help those. Even with DVA, you hear about DVA. I have my own problems with DVA, but at the same time, their changes have been significant to support families, to support people. Are you always going to please people? No, because they're the majority and you can't please the majority because we're all individuals. But you can try to do right, and that's what they have done by changing.
What's the biggest thing out of talking today that you really want to put across?
I don't think there's one thing. There's just so much in my lifespan and so many life changes that happen that I think so many people, different people, can get different aspects of it. But if I guess I had to pick one thing, it would be the collaboration or the combination of not letting your conditions or your diagnosis label you. Not letting community or individuals define you. Not let compensation streams tell you how to live your life. I sit here emotional and open, but at the same time, I am doing that because by me pushing myself and trying to feel what's normal shouldn't stop me from being me. And, labelled with PTSD, depression, and having my physical challenges can easily keep me at home. And if DVA or the military or anyone ever questions me saying that you don't have PTSD or your PTSD isn't severe, they don't live my life. They just don't understand but how hard I'm willing to live life, or how well I want to be seen living life. And one of the things that I learned ages ago, and one of the things that I try to incite in my clients is, what legacy do you want to leave behind? And that gets people thinking. what's your legacy? And the thing that I've learned is I can easily be defined by my labels or my diagnosis. I can be easily defined by society, easily defined by individuals. But by me defining what PTSD is to me, and defining what depression is, and defining what my facial scars are all about, is by me living life and showing my children and my friends and my family that I'm not letting it define me. I'm getting out and living the life that I need to. And just because I work or I am seen to society doesn't mean I'm not at stress. It means I'm accepting the stress. I'm managing the stress to live a life that I want and for my children to see me and be proud of me.
You've used a lot of the motivation that you've developed and you've channeled it into sport. What was the motivation there?
Once again, it comes down to that community, individual, the organisation, the compensation systems telling me what I can't do and defining me. I got into sport because I wanted to be able to feel. Yes, I've lost my limbs and my face is scarred, but I don't have that fine touch anymore. I don't feel hot water like others feel. I don't smell, taste like others. By getting into sport, psychologically, it challenged me. It challenged me to accept the way people looked at me. It challenged me psychologically by accepting who I was, accepting the way people looked at me, and trying to overcome my feelings and my thoughts of anxiety and sadness and guilt and grief. Physically, sport helped me by doing. One of the things I remember doing, is when I was swimming and, feeling the water on my arms or feeling it on the back and feeling at peace, was getting out of the water and running to a line and hearing a lady saying, "Holy shit, he can swim." Because I wasn't last, I wasn't first, I might have been fifth or sixth, but I'm no different to anyone else. If I give it, I give it all. So sport has given me physical, psychological, and emotional resilience in the fact that I've had to build on me. I don't talk about my past, like I said, because it brings up too much baggage. But the sport enables me to realize and enables me to feel what I've lost. So I get satisfaction from it.
You get to feel, though, and that's a really interesting thing, that people that haven't gone through the sort of trauma that you have, you're talking about feeling certain things. Most people just take it for granted.
Yeah, and that's when it comes down to that fear-based mind, a positive mindset, neurohacks. Like I said, in Townsville, I had a lot of support. I had coaches or people I could go cycling with. But it wasn't just about that support. It was being able to feel what they could feel and enjoying it.
Coming down to Brisbane, though, it's been difficult. What's happened? Why is it so difficult down here in Brisbane to set up those networks and establish something similar to what you had already together in Townsville?
I try to identify why. I can say Townsville is a garrison city, but in Townsville, I had Fiona, the OT that supported me. I had my military mates that really knew me and saw the challenges that I had gone through. I had my swimming colleagues, I had my cycling and running buddies that knew my hardship. They knew what I couldn't see. They knew how I rode or how I needed to adapt to swimming. They knew that my sight or my arms couldn't allow me to do certain things, and they supported and coached and pushed me through that. When I got to Brisbane, the traffic is so much heavier. People seem to be more fast-paced. People seem to be more arrogant. People don't seem to be so open. But it's not just them. It's me. It's the fact that, when you look at being down in a park with your daughter and being questioned what to say to another child, or being on a dating site and being judged because of, oh, you've lost limbs or you look different. It reduces your self-confidence. And then you try to work out, I've come so far, but at the same time, how do I rebuild that? Yes, I can get out onto a bike tomorrow and cycle. At what cost? I'm not at that level that I used to be at elite. I've got to get back out on the bike, and I've got to manage the traffic with one eye, poor sight, not knowing the roads, not being confident on the roads, in that traffic and in that area. For me to open up to someone and say, I need help, is hard. It's, you want to be independent. People want to help, but it's trying to let them in and understand, and you don't want to slow them down as well. So if it was to be cycling, look, I need to learn. I can do this. I want to do this, but I'm not at that level again. And you feel like you're going to be pulling them back. It's like anyone getting into a sport, but the greater challenge is because, one, I need to adapt to everything. Like I said, I need to pre-position things, or I need to prepare for those activities in preparation, not to cause harm to myself, make sure that others are safe. It's not over-analysing, it's just the fact that the way my life has been, I've got to adapt to it. So it's been hard to reach out to explain again and tell people who I am, what I am, how I need help, and build those models. Would it be great to someone go, hey, we want to help you, we want to do this? And I've tried. You go to Mates for Mates, and their programs are tailored for veterans. I'm a veteran, but they help me to realise I'm not, because most veterans don't work. Most veterans go to their programs during the day, or most veterans are out hiking, during the week. I can't, because I get more satisfaction out of helping others or avoiding my own issues by working. And I go to work, and then when I sought help through Mates for Mates, they couldn't help me. And then when I asked, can you put me in contact with people on my side, or we can't give you that information, and that's as far as it went. They couldn't put me in contact with anyone and reach out. I've met some people, and some great people here in Brisbane, but they're at my caliber, and the fact where I say, they want to get out and they want to enjoy life, they want to have drinks and that's only one part. I want to be able to still do my sporting things, and I want to be able to do that with people. And I haven't been able to find those people. Yes, I need to reach into a triathlon team and that again, but it's just so hard, because you've got to explain your whole situation again, and you need support. And we were talking about support before, but at what cost are you putting on to that support? What drain, what financial, what emotional effect or what cost do they have to give me to help me achieve my dream? Is that right?
Did you ever look at it, though, that what they will get out of it by helping you?
Well, like I said, everyone's normal. I want to be seen normal. And it's a hard thing, you said, we're talking about before, someone that is born blind compared to someone that's, you're blind. It's part of the hardship of accepting it. You got to let your walls down. You got to try to let people in. And I let people in, but how to explain to people what you feel every day, and that can be a drain. My last partner, who I got my daughter with, she's fantastic. She was everything that I was, and outgoing, loved life and things. And I love life, I love smile, I love going out and doing things. But my stresses bring me to a comfort level, where when I was with her, she brought me back up to that level and made me feel amazing, and made me feel, where we were, and it was fantastic. So it's hard to want to put my expectations onto someone else. So to reach out to say, I want to do this, I want to do that, and accept them to say, yes, I'm willing to help you, comes at a cost, I feel.
It's interesting when you talk about PTSD that it is questioned in you, yet you're injured. And to me, the injury is something that just keeps on giving in the worst possible way.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I'd like to think that I give myself credit for my labels.
I don't think enough. I don't think you give yourself enough credit.
But at the same time, it always sits in the back of my mind by me defining my conditions at what cost. Because compensation processes, systems will see me as able and take away the quality of life that I fight for. Potentially, yes, I'm on a Class A pension, which I've come accustomed to and have built a life around. And if they took that away from me, yes, it would impact on me. But the Class A pension has been given to me because of my losses and the things that I've dealt with. But if they see me as able, as efficient as I am, it actually doesn't show, and they don't understand the hardship and the stresses that I have in life to take that away. Just because I'm physically getting out to work, they don't understand what it takes for me to get out of work. They don't understand the pressures that I'm at work to perform at that level or that credit that you talk about as everyone else. I try to give myself credit, and it's one of my weaknesses. I don't give myself enough credit, and that's what I mean. I loved my last relationship, and because I felt that credit in her, if that makes sense, and maybe that's the hardest thing to be letting go of her.
In your sporting arena, you excelled at the Invictus Games. How important are the Invictus Games and that sort of collaboration of sporting veterans?
We're going to take a bit further step back. So with my sporting achievements, yes, I've swam numerous swims from Townsville Magnetic to Townsville. I did a double crossing from Maggie to Townsville. I have swam the Rockness Channel solo. I've done the Mark Webber Challenge. I've done numerous triathlons. I've done an Ironman and a lot of adventure-thons, which is, mountain bike riding, paddling and all that. One of the other things that I had done was attempt to get into the Paralympics for swimming and triathlons. And the thing that I learned through that is that I was not suited for Paralympics, because when they classify someone, they classify them on their disabilities, which is fine. But because I have multiple, I have sensory and physical, I'm always going to be on the end of that scale. So I would not be on the top of the swimming scale against Matt Cowdery, because he had the same losses as me plus one full hand, but he had sight. So he could see the edge of the pool clearer than me, and he would excel in the pool better than me because he had a full hand, but I was only 3 seconds below him. When I came to the triathlons, yes, I could swim and I was competing up there against the other Paralympics. But when it came to cornering and when it came to, running, I couldn't see or judge the corner as well as them because of my visual difficulties, but because of my hand dexterity, but where they had just lost a leg or they had one arm. So I have got multiple. So go to your question with the Invictus. I've done 2. And the first one was a challenge because we went overseas, and it was the first time I had ever gone overseas with a group, and I was out of home. I was out of comfort. And when I went to Canada, I struggled. I struggled being out of Australia because I wasn't in my comfort. And I had to push through it. And I remember breaking down during the opening and closing services because of the memories, because of the flashbacks, and breaking down because of the emotions that were brought in.
What happened?
Well, when I got to Canada, I was I felt my eyesight was playing up, and the emotions started getting to me, which started impacting on my injuries. They had to take me to the doctors, and I think it was more probably psychological that impacted. And then everything got cleared through the doctors, and then when we got to the opening ceremony, they started playing music, and there was noise, and there was lights, and there was everything. And it got too much, It brought so when I'm in crowds, I can't tolerate as much because I can't hear, I can't see as well as I do now. I don't have very much now, but as soon as I lose control of that, it heightens my senses. And then to have flashing lights and loud music, and then having the visual aspect of soldiers and that, it just brought everything back of what I had lost. My service. It brought back me being in Timor and Afghanistan. It reminded me of the things, the atrocious things that I had seen or the things I had done. So it was hard. It was difficult. But then when I got in to competing, I was competing people that were similar to me. So it was empowering, and I felt good. I felt strong. I felt invincible. I felt confident. So my first Invictus Games, where I won the most medals and felt most pride and privileged, was sensational. And I had competed in 2. And the reason I don't talk about the second one, which was here in Sydney, is because Sydney lost its focus. And it lost its focus because it was about winning. And what happened is we were all down in Sydney, we're preparing, it was raining. And when it was raining, we couldn't do our athletics training as much, and they put us on to this oval, and I got onto the oval, started running, and I ended up getting a grade 1 or 2 hamstring tear. And I did everything I could to recover from it, And this is a day out or 2 days out before competing. I was seeing physio every 3 hours. I had compression packs, I had ice packs, I had everything. And I was that committed to recovering. I also had the opportunity to go up the Sydney Harbour Bridge with Prince Harry, and I said, I can't do it. I give up. I'm not doing it. I've got to recover. And they said, you understand what you're missing? I went, I don't care. I'm here to compete and to make myself proud again, And what took away from Sydney was this, me recovering was going to the first game. I was walking down to cheer on my team. They were competing in rowing. And as I was limping, walking down there, one of the officials caught up to me and said, oh, Michael, what's going on in that? And I said, oh, I've torn my hamstring, so I've pulled out of the rowing and I'm recovering. He goes, oh, how are you going to do your Olympic? Or how are you going to do your swimming? How are you going to do your running or your athletics? And I said, I'm going to compete in what I can compete and just take it easy through everything else. He goes, that's not the Invictus spirit. And I felt gutted. I felt pissed off. I went down and watched the game and I had to walk out. And I went and spoke to one of the athletics managers or one of the managers and said, this is what this prick said. And it annoyed, and it got to me. So my first race was swimming. And I was with my partner at the time, and my daughter was down there too. So I competed in swimming the best I could with a torn hamstring. I wasn't kicking. I tried not to kick, and I didn't win medals, and it wasn't about medals, but I competed. But what people didn't see was because of that wanker, I'd finished the swimming limping. I have to go out the back, have to get it re-torn or re-strapped, get up ice because of the hamstring, because I would either kick or because I couldn't get out of the pool. And then I'd be in the physio, and then I'd get ready for the next race, and then I'd compete. And because of him and me not being able to do as strong as I was, and I wasn't winning the medals because they had a focus on winning medals, I felt I wasn't to that standard. And then I was getting ready. So before swimming, I actually had cycling. And when I was in the cycling, I tore it further because I was trying to compete. And then because I heard it, I just kept going around, and I lost hope. And I was on pain meds and all this stuff. And then when I got to swimming and that. So by the time I had finished swimming, I walked out. I can't remember what event it was in. And I was there with my wife, or my partner at the time, and my daughter, and she was in tears. She goes, why are you doing this? Why? I said, I need to, not let it get to me. I need to prove this guy wrong. And my partner turned around and goes, you're hurting yourself. I went, I know, I'm trying not to. I'm not kicking. I'm not doing this. And she was upset. And I said, I promise I won't. I'll pull out of this race and that. Anyway, by the time we finished that conversation, seeing her, how hurt she was, we were in athletics. And when I got to athletics, I started my runs, and I said I wasn't going to compete. I did the runs, but I didn't compete. But as soon as you're in that field and you're on that line. As soon as I took off on the 400, I felt my hamstring again. And I just walked around, or I jogged around, and I didn't compete, like I said to her, but I felt my hamstring. So I think we spoke, but she never said anything to me afterwards, and I knew I was wrong. And then I got to long jump, and I got introduced to this child. His name was not Gibson, I think. And he was similar to me. He'd lost his arm in a lawn mowing accident and all that stuff. And I had a Canadian, another guy or something, and we're sitting there talking. I said, do you mind if this kid jumps for me? I can't jump. He goes, if you understand, if he jumps for you, he'll take your points. And I went, I don't care. And we went up to the marshalling area, and they said, he can't jump for you. He's not recognised. I said, this is wrong. I can't jump. I will jump with him or whatever. And goes, and the other two gentlemen said, if he wants to jump for him and take the points, let it be. Who cares? Anyway, we went down to the start line, and there were still people against it and all this stuff. Anyway, the only way for us to jump was for me to run with him. I said, well, mate, I'll run with you. You jump. So the Sydney Invictus Games, as far as I'm concerned, has bad memories because of one individual, which affected me, affected my family, because I let it, you could say. But because the whole Games had lost its purpose and spirit.
What is the purpose of the Invictus Games as you see them? What should it be?
It should be about enabling and encouraging people to defeat those labels I speak about. So it doesn't matter if the person isn't able to get down to a game or to a training event, and when he gets there, he's been drinking a lot of alcohol, which had happened, and kick him off. It's not about that. It's about, mate, we need you to come down again, because he did get down there. How he got down there was his coping strategy, but making him realise, well, you can keep coming, but you need to reduce it, not kick him off the team. So to me, Invictus is about enabling people to face the barriers. It's enabling them to achieve what they can't achieve. Enabling them to say, come to a camp. Allowing them face the fears. If they can compete, let them compete at their level. Building on the hope. If they had torn a hamstring, accept what they have said, because they have faced so many barriers to get where they were. So it's about enabling and encouraging. And a lot of people do that. Like I said, it only takes one person to destroy something, or it takes a handful of people, or the focus changes to goals or changes to something else, and not realising and focusing on an individual and the family.
What do you think about Prince Harry and what he's set up with the Invictus Games? Did you actually get to meet him?
Yeah, I've met him a couple of times. Definitely. I do remember, that's right. So I met him in passings, and then the time I met him was in Canada. In Canada, when I had my relapse, like I said, I couldn't handle the initial ceremony, and they took me to a quiet room. And when I was in the quiet room, once again, I felt guilty and ashamed, and I said, I need to get back out to the team. My partner at the time saw what I was going through, so she came down. And I said, okay, I've got to get out. So I staged it. I said, all right, I'm going to walk from here to here. So I did that, and she encouraged me. We got to a certain point. My partner couldn't come any further. I walked to the next point. When I got to that next point, a security guard said, oh, mate, you need to move. And I said, mate, you can fuck off. I don't need to go anywhere. Not realising it was Harry's bodyguards or security, whatever you wanted to say. Anyway, Harry ended up coming up and talking to me and just going, mate, it's all good, blah, 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 and yeah, so that's when I got to meet him. And then,
what were your impressions when you met him?
Oh, look, to be honest, I was going through enough of my own emotions. He just seemed like a genuine guy. You put your hand on your shoulder and go, you're doing good, all's fine. At the time, I think I felt comforted, but I was just focusing on trying to get back out. He seemed genuine. I understood what the guys or the security were trying to do, but I didn't care. But he did the right thing.
With what Harry's done, do you think he's done a good thing with the Invictus Games?
100%. And, he has the name, he had the label and all that stuff to really get the society, nation, globe to understand and appreciate and build on what the knowledge of veterans are. But it's just not the Invictus Names. You've got other charities, you've got the Warrior Games that do the same thing. They just probably don't have the title or the the global effect. Well, there are organisations in Australia that try to do the same thing, but once again, I do think some purpose has been lost. But yeah, it did have and has the effect that he'd achieved and wanted.
What do you want to achieve on the sporting field? What's the goal? What do you want to go and do next?
I have no desire to be competitive anymore. I can honestly say that Lars Invictus took it out of me. I honestly can say that Sydney Invictus took away some hope because of what I learned. It wasn't just that, it was the fact that I came to a point in my life where I actually appreciated my partner and I appreciated my children, I appreciated where I was with my work and when I was with myself. And I wanted to build on that, and I just wanted to enjoy cycling. I just wanted to enjoy kayaking. I just wanted to enjoy it. And because I was getting older and felt what I had felt and feeling that, I wasn't so much of a veteran anymore and I had different pursuits, I actually just want to enjoy competing or just going for a swim or doing a triathlon, just getting out and doing it. There's more satisfaction just doing it than just winning medals and things like that. And which it reminds me, like when I was trying for the Paris swimming, like I said to you, I've got multiple conditions and sensory physical. And one of the ways for me to get on the upper class or that up on the next level was to amputate one of my 3 fingers because it's fused. And I was seriously thinking about it, amputating my finger to be seen competitive. So in a way, I'm glad I don't, because I now realise what that finger offers me, which is stability when holding a cup. But when you start looking at, that's how competitive I was, how I wanted to be seen. So I'm glad I didn't get my 3rd finger amputated. I'm glad that I've learnt what I've got. But I just want to be able to get out and cycle and be safe and run and enjoy the competition. Of course, I'm going to have that competitive streak. It's never going to be lost.
But is that hard-ass approach, the hard-ass Sergeant Lydiard, is that what got you through so much, though?
It has, 100%. I remember catching up with a friend or running into a friend, him or his wife, and they said, we just thought you were arrogant. We thought you were always arrogant as a sergeant or corporal and things. And I said, it's self-preservation. And then he turned around and said, it's probably got you through where you are today. And I said, you're right. I said, I was never arrogant. It's pride and it's strong belief of who I am and what my goals are, what my achieve are. And that's what's helped me to get me to where I am today. So by me going out and just competing and getting the position that I get will be satisfying enough, because for me to achieve that means I've achieved enough to say that I've settled in Brisbane, because I haven't settled in Brisbane. I haven't found that comfort in competing, or haven't found that comfort in someone, because I do want to, there's nothing worse living life alone. I've got amazing children, I had a great partner, but I want to be able to share my enthusiasm. I want to share my motivation. I want to be able to do what they want to do, but I want them to do what I enjoy too. I want to, it's funny, things that you learn, you're talking about relationships. At uni as an occupational therapist, they talk about intimacy and relationships. It's a big thing, people undervalue the importance of relationships. And, there's 4 elements to a relationship or a loving relationship: commitment, passion, communication, trust. And the last one, I forget, but you got these 4 or 5 elements. And I definitely build on it. If you don't have trust, if you don't have intimacy, and I want it. And I want to build on it with someone. You can't do it alone. But, to go out cycling or just to go out to the pub and out have a meal with someone and have a genuine conversation, enjoy the touch or the comfort of someone, or being able just to hold someone's hand in public or down the street, or just being able to hold someone and enjoy a movie, I miss. And I probably long for it more because I've lost it. I lost it from, my injuries. I can't feel as much, and I love holding hands, and I like being passionate.
You say you don't feel like a veteran. It's a pretty big call, because you're one of the most honourable veterans that I've had the privilege of meeting.
once again, it comes down to my dynamics. It's come down to my past, my life course, life changes. I say that very lightly, that I don't feel like a veteran, because I have a lot of veteran friends, and I have a lot of strong veteran friends because I've achieved a lot. And I have a lot of veteran friends that try to achieve a lot, which are very inspirational too. All my veteran friends are inspirational. But I guess what I mean is, the thing that sits back is, I remember going to an Anzac Day with my dad, my uncle, who was a veteran as well, and my oldest son. And we went to this Cairns RSL. Anyway, I went in, sitting with them, and I was observant as I am, and people looking at me, watching me, and would you like a beer? Go and get a beer. And, some veterans, we'll buy you a beer, I'd walk back and people were looking at me and just taking it on. I think I know why they're looking at me. Oh, wow, look at him, he's achieved so much. And you look at the positives of things. You don't look at the negatives. You don't think of the scars. Anyway, I'm just accepting it, taking it in, and, regardless, I'm accepting it. However, as we were driving back to where my partner was, my oldest son said, "Dad, why was everyone watching you?" I said, "What?" He goes, "Every time you got up and got a beer, people looked. Every time you were eating or tried to, have what you were doing, people were watching, or they seemed to talk." And I said to him, "Mate, because they're probably respectful of me, they're probably proud or whatever." I said, and he turned around and said, "Do you think that because they don't know what to say, or because they're ashamed?" I said, "I don't think so. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's because they're proud of me." Anyway, that hurt. That really hurt to see my son at the time, 15, to realise that people in my own community, my own culture, was staring. They didn't come up and talk to me. They made me feel, or made my son feel, ashamed. So I called up my father and I called up my uncle. I said, "Did you realise this?" And they went, "Yep, we saw it. But no one came up and said anything to you. They just watched." I went, "Right." So we drove back down to Townsville on Sunday. I went shopping with my son. And he goes, "Dad, why are you wearing glasses in the shopping centre?" I said, "I know, that's what I just do." And he turned around and he said, "Is it because of what happened on Anzac Day?" And I went, "Yeah." I said, "Every time I go into the community, I'm either wearing glasses or wearing sunglasses to hide my visual scars, because I feel that my kids will be ashamed, my kids will be pointed out, I will be pointed out." So after that Anzac experience, I stopped wearing my medals. And as an OT, working with DVA, working with defence members, and working with civilians and, everyday people, you listen to their stories, you're empathetic about the stories, you treat them as individuals. And you hear the modern soldier talk about their difficulties and how they want compensation for this, how they want compensation for that. You hear veterans saying that they can't get into society, they can't do things. I get it. I honestly get it. And then I met this couple, defence, and she was struggling. And she had a defence partner, and he was, DVA, couldn't work, couldn't do anything, which I respected. However, she was burnt out. She had her own PTSD, depressive, anxious issues. They also had a child. And she had to manage the child, pick up from school, bring home from school, do the homework, because he couldn't do it. And I said, "Let me help you. Let me get you some household services. Let me get you in there." He goes, "Oh, my husband doesn't like it. No one can come in the house." And I went, "No, this isn't about him. This is about you. We will do it." And I had to go and speak to him. So I felt I'm not a veteran because I feel that some people let the conditions define them. My conditions define me, but I choose to what degree. And it's friggin' hard. And the reason I say I'm not a veteran is, one, because of that Anzac experience. Two, because the way that veterans treat each other, the way that the community looks at veterans, and because the way that veterans don't want to look after themselves. And one of the the most important things I had ever learnt through the army was self-aid. You know, as soon as you're shot, or as soon as something goes wrong, or you twist an ankle, you need to give self-aid first before first aid. In the heat of the battle, you're not always going to have someone come to you. It's about you putting your patch on. It's about you helping yourself. There is no difference in what we do today. And I pride myself on that. I give aid to myself first. I try to help people understand that, and the veterans and, you know, even civilians to understand that this is us. We need to face it. And they keep pushing back. I can't. Well, neurohack it. You can. I say it lightly. I don't feel like a veteran because I know I'm a veteran, but people, you know, I've had veterans comment about me, oh, you're lucky you don't have PTSD, or you don't have this. And I take it, but they don't have no idea. They've got no idea at all what I tolerate. At the same time, you know, I've got veterans that go, wow, you know, incredible, you inspire me. So my thing is, sometimes I don't, because I feel like a health professional trying to preach and trying to encourage and coach them to feel and help them to feel some form or some level. I'm not saying that veterans or civvies have to go back to the norm. I'm just saying that they need to support the family. They need to do a little bit more for them and to realise what legacy they want to leave behind. To me, a lot of the times they embellish on things to make sure they get the compensation they want. We all have to fight for something, but the compensation system shouldn't have to tell us to embellish. It should be accepting of and have a better empathetic understanding of what we endure.
How do you celebrate Anzac Day these days then?
Well, this was the first Anzac. This year was the first Anzac I spent with Mason and my daughter wearing medals. Last year, we were all on COVID, but I was with my partner at the time. I just walked out by myself and stood there not wearing medals. I spoke to this gentleman and he just said, oh, you were in the army, why aren't you wearing medals? I said, oh, I just don't feel it, mate. You know? But this year was special because I had my daughter, I had Mason, and we marched, you know? So I felt pride then because I was with my son and daughter, you know. I had a good mate with me too. I had a good mate, you know. So I did feel pride when I did it then. So this Anzac was special.
Let's hope there's many more, and if the chat with you is not inspirational and teaching to a lot of people, I just don't know what is. You are an absolute inspiration. And Michael Lydiard, thanks for joining us over the bonnet.
Cheers, mate. I really do appreciate it.